Welcome to our module on the global business environment. Before we begin, let's take 1 minute or so on some background about our world. In any business, we need customers, so it's important to understand where the world's population is. Question: what percent of the world's population lives in the United States? The answer: only around 5%. So as a business that only focuses on the United States, we're ignoring 95% of the world's population. However, it's not quite that simple. Just as a quick data point, over half the world's population lives inside this circle. Also, a fun fact, by 2050, Mumbai is projected to be the largest city in the world, larger than both LA and New York combined. So as we said before, it's not quite that simple. For example, there are about 100 Lamborghini dealerships in the world. How many are in India or China? Remember, we said close to half the world's population lives there. Well, the answer as of 2017 is none. It might be because, as our next map shows, the per capita income in this part of the world is very low. They may not be able to afford a Lamborghini, at least not today. However, that may be changing. If we look at the GDP growth rates, countries low on the per capita income currently are high on the GDP growth rate. Now, of course, we cannot be sure that this trend will continue, but if it does, we will see many of the consumers who are currently being ignored come into the consumer base. When we align the two charts, you can see where we have low per capita income, we have very high GDP growth. As a simple example, there are about 7 billion people in the world today. Round numbers, 2 billion are consumers. Businesses have focused on most of their attention because they're relatively wealthy. The 5 billion have generally been ignored. But if the trends in GDP growth continue, we will see dramatic change in this over the next 50 years as these 5 billion consumers come into the marketplace. So that concludes our quick 1 minute tour. Now let's talk about nations, why they trade. Nations trade for the same reasons individuals trade. If I want a soccer ball more than a camera, and I find someone who has a soccer ball but wants a camera, we trade. It's mutually beneficial to both of us. We are both better off via trade. Okay, so how do we measure trade, particularly with nations? Well, we simply add up and compare our exports, what we sell and ship, to our imports, what we purchase from other nations and import. The difference is our balance of trade. Exports greater than imports, we have a favorable balance of trade. Imports greater than exports, we have an unfavorable balance of trade. Now, there's several ways to enter global markets. Some are more risky, but the ones that are more risky generally have more potential rewards. They include licensing, franchising, contract manufacturing, strategic alliances, joint ventures, and FDI, which stands for foreign direct investment. Generally, as we go down the list, these forms of entry become more risky. However, as we said before, they have potentially greater rewards. To make it a little more complex, there are many challenges to entering a foreign market. They include the different cultures, different economic systems, and finally, legal and regulatory differences. Now, sometimes nations will try to protect national businesses with tariffs, which raise the price of foreign goods, quotas, which limit the number of goods, and embargoes, which eliminate trade altogether. To avoid this, sometimes countries make agreements to promote free trade by agreeing not to place tariffs or quotas on each other. These agreements are generally called free trade agreements. Examples include NAFTA, the European Union, and there are many others throughout the world.
Created using Powtoon.